Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe, and I'm thrilled to welcome Jordan Downey back to the podcast today to talk about a big one, The Getaway, starring Steve McQueen and Ali MacGraw, and directed by Sam Peckinpah, released in December of 1972. How are we doing, Jordan?
I'm great. This is the third time.
Third time's the
Thank you.
charm.
Yeah.
Our first chat about a non-horror film on Film at 50.
Which is awesome because I feel like horror people get put in the horror box all the time. And the reality is I'm probably watching more non-horror movies than I'm actually watching horror on a daily, just my normal routine.
Right. So yeah, if you go back into the archives, we talked about Willard about a year and a half ago. And then a little over a year ago, we talked about Let's Scare Jessica to Death. So those are our last two episodes. We also did a bonus episode, if you remember, Jordan. We talked about the 10 movies we can't wait to watch in 2021. Remember that?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yours was your Scream that year, or one of the
Halloween Kills.
Halloween? Yeah. Oh, how did that turn out?
Yeah.
that
Oh my gosh, Jordan. What happened with the Halloween trilogy? Because I liked the 2018. I thought that one was pretty good, and then just kind of went off the rails the last two, Halloween Kills and Ends. Did you like Ends? Some people like it.
I would say I probably, if I'm being honest, liked it more than Kills.
Okay.
But I'd side more with you. I thought that the remake, the 2018 one, was more of my cup of tea, and the other two just weren't. It didn't do it for me. But I watched them both, and I wasn't bored. Turning it off.
No, I liked a lot of the kill scenes and the carnage of kills and bringing some of the actors back. And then I liked in Ends, I gave them points for going somewhere new and different with a different character and not having it just be Laurie being stalked for 2 hours. That would have not worked. Mm-hmm. So I understood where they were going, but it fell flat for me in Halloween Ends. All of that material with the new character for how that turns out at the end, I'm like, all of that just for this moment, and then we get the Laurie Michael showdown anyway. It just felt like if it didn't connect for me, and I felt like the 2018 Halloween had a much more full story from beginning to end that left you satisfied, that gave you exactly what you wanted, whereas the last two, it didn't seem to me like there was much of a plan. Like it seemed like they were just kind of throwing darts at the wall.
Yeah. You kind of felt promised, like when they announced the trilogy after the first one did so well, that there was going to be sort of, some sort of that they were going to all kind of be continuous.
Yeah.
And it really didn't go that way. So it does make you think that there either wasn't a big plan, or the plan was to just do totally different movies and just go in different directions. Yet you have Jamie Lee. Yeah, it didn't all add up for me, but it certainly, the franchise is alive and reaping in the money is more than ever. So
yeah, Halloween Ends,
people wouldn't agree.
Halloween Ends really did not do well past the opening weekend, and it still has made over $100 million. So this franchise is not going anywhere.
Yeah. No way.
The next 5 to 7 years, there'll be another reboot of some kind, and we'll go and we'll, be angry about it, and it'll all be fun.
Yep.
That's exactly how it rolls with this franchise. I believe your movie of the year you were looking forward to was No Time to Die, the James Bond movie. Did you ever see No Time to Die?
I did. Yeah. I liked it. I don't actually, that was on the list. I don't know if it was my number one. Maybe Green Knight was that year.
Oh, right. Or maybe Green Knight.
What else?
And I think Spiral, the Saw sequel, Spiral, maybe.
That may have been higher on the list. I feel, I don't know what that list was, but looking back on that now, I wouldn't say any of those floored me. So
it'd be weird to rewatch. I'm sure we probably talked about a couple that were pushed to 2022 as well. But what did you think, real quick? What do you think of the new Scream that came out earlier this year?
I liked the new Scream.
Did you like the new Scream?
A lot. Yeah, I did. I love the Scream films, but I'm not so obsessed to the point where I'd be really upset that they kill characters or do certain things. I don't hold it so near and dear that I'd be offended like some fans. But I loved it. I thought just like the naming a character Wes and the whole and having him die and the whole party of just with the
Yeah,
banners that said for
for
Wes is
West.
just like that's just a nice, clever way of honoring what's come before and doing it organic to the story. And
Right.
you know, was it they kind of took the reboot approach of just like let's play it safe and just basically give you
Hmm.
a the Scream movie that you're
That you
expecting.
want.
And
Yeah.
there's something to be said for that because, you know, as we're talking about the Halloween things, they try to do something different that's not always met with open arms. So
Yeah.
it's tricky, but I thought it was good. It was very
Yeah.
well made.
Oh, absolutely. I was frustrated a little bit because I thought there'd be more of Nev Campbell. So that was kind of
Yeah.
off-putting to me how little of it she's in. And I did feel like there was a certain spark that Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson would bring to it that was a little
Mm-hmm.
bit missing. I thought the new younger characters weren't as exciting as even
Mm-hmm.
some of the ones we got in Scream 4. Like they were a little bit bland to me, but there were also some things I really liked. I thought the third act was fantastic. I thought the big death scene was handled very well and felt earned. I didn't think that that was just like a, you know, a punch to us fans. I felt like that was a
Mm-hmm.
well-earned moment in the way that that played out. Even though I
Mm-hmm.
expected it, I was like, this is coming. I was like, I knew once they
Mm-hmm.
were driving to the hospital, I'm like, oh, I know what's going to happen here. If I was
Yeah.
making this movie, I know exactly what I would be doing here. But then I watched it again about 2-3 months ago and I liked it a lot more. So I think once I was able
Interesting.
to kind of like separate myself from the disappointment that Nev Campbell is basically a cameo, and some of the early stuff I thought was a little slow. I definitely appreciated it more the second time, and curious to see what they do in Scream 6, which is coming now in early March. Jordan, early March.
Really? Wow, we should be
Yeah,
getting a
they pushed
trailer
they
soon
pushed it
then.
up. We'll probably be getting a trailer soon. I'm still not convinced that Nev Campbell's not in it. I think it might be an Andrew Garfield situation thing with Spider-Man No Way Home, but we will know soon.
Yeah, spoiler alert for
So,
those of you who haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home, which I actually haven't, but I do know that that's
oh,
a part of it. No, no, no,
you
I knew.
haven't seen it yet? Okay.
It's so obvious. Come on, the writing was on the wall with that like a mile away that they were going to do that. But no, I haven't seen it yet. I'm pretty behind on the Marvel universe, to be
Oh
honest.
yeah, no, yeah. So Spider-Man No Way Home, they re-released it this last summer, and there were Andrew Garfield and
I
Tobey
know,
Maguire right there on the poster.
I
So
know,
I hope
I know. They gave up with that. Spoiler alert. Pretty
it's
quick.
actually pretty good. I'm not a huge Marvel guy. Some of the Spider-Man movies I'm kind of like thumbs down on, but I thought the new one was pretty solid. So I would check it out. I enjoyed that.
Okay.
All right, so let's get into The Getaway. Had you heard of this movie before, Jordan?
Yes, and I actually found myself recalling a lot of moments in it, and I can't yet pinpoint when or where I had seen
Oh,
it.
you'd seen it once
Or
before.
I absolutely had either seen it. Maybe it was when I was a kid and caught it on TV, or rented. I don't think I would have rented it. Maybe it was in film school and it was a required thing. I don't know. Maybe I even just had watched it on some YouTube compilation
Okay,
researching something. But I had never sat in my adult life and watched it, you know, like I
getting
did
that.
for
Yeah.
this. So no, though some of it seemed familiar, I can't figure out where I was getting those memories from. But I was glad to sit and actually focus on it and pay attention this time.
That's so funny because I had a similar experience. I was under the
Huh?
impression I had never seen this before, and there were a couple moments that looked kind of familiar.
Yeah.
We probably watched a clip of it or something at film school or something, and then we forgot. I don't know. Maybe for like sound design class or something, because some of it did look a little familiar, but at the same time, there were long stretches where I'm like, I've never seen this movie in full. Like this
Yeah.
looked, it was
Same.
new enough, but
Same here. Same exact thing. And I feel like there's so many other movies that have come since that pull from this, or just
right,
general car chase movies, the technical aspects of shooting that, the heist aspects. There's been so many movies that have kind of been in this Bonnie and Clyde
yeah.
getaway type of
Mhm.
world. It could easily have been on some compilation of 101 greatest, heist
Yeah, heist move
movies
scenes or
that you've
something.
caught bits of. So it's always interesting when you see an older movie and you start to pick up on like all of the inspiration, all of the things that it has inspired, and then you're like, like, am I remembering this because I've seen it redone a bunch of
Mhm.
times, or is it because I'm harkening back to the actual original? But
Well, it doesn't
um,
help that Steve McQueen always looks pretty much the same in every movie he's
yeah,
in. And then
yeah,
there's other films he's in with car chases like Bullet, and Thomas Crown Affair has a little bit of a Getaway vibe. It's like a famous leading lady and Faye Dunaway, and there's like
hmm
robberies and that. So there sometimes it's also about him being a certain look that doesn't change very much movie to movie, so that might be part of it too. But I
yeah.
don't know about you, Jordan, but I might have seen a little bit of this. I really had a great time watching this movie. Did you like it?
Loved it. Like,
Okay, good.
yeah, absolutely loved it.
This is a
I'm
fun
so
movie.
glad that we did this. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot of fun. It's the better version of a lot of the inspiration that we're talking about that has come from it.
right.
Um, it's so great. I mean, we'll get into, some of the elements that I thought really elevated it above sort of
Yeah.
its competition, but in general, I had a blast with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm in a unique position in doing this podcast week to week as I've looked at pretty much every major film at this point of 1972. And there is a
hmm
lot of junk this year, a
Hmm.
lot of movies without much vision, without much energy and excitement, where it just kind of lumbers along. And including a film we talked about in August called Junior Bonner, starring Steve
hmm
McQueen
Yeah.
and Ben Johnson, and directed by Sam Peckinpah.
hmm
They all three of them were involved in a movie that came out in August of 72, and then they're all three a part of The Getaway, which is December of 72. Like that's pretty quick. Like a quick turnaround. And Junior Bonner is a rough watch. It is very slow, not much of interest there. Like a couple
Interesting.
scenes. I'm like an hour in, you're just searching for like a moment of something interesting to happen. And then it's like, how did three of these people be a part of a movie like The Getaway, which is just so much better in every way? 4 months
Walter
late.
Hill, maybe.
Walter Hill, the
That,
screenwriter.
yeah, that credit might be. It
Yeah.
Junior Bonner is one of Peckinpah's more tame movies too, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
it's
that
kind
kind
of
of the
known
reputation it
as
has?
yeah, because so when we say Sam Peckinpah, most people think of his really tense thrillers, action
hmm
films. He's most famous for The Wild Bunch from '69. Have you seen The Wild Bunch?
Oh
Really,
yeah, I mean
really
the
great, kind of
violence
epic.
is pretty shocking for that time
Yeah.
period,
Yeah.
especially. Yeah.
Like, so the MPAA is introduced in early 68. That's why we get movies like Rosemary's Baby and some of these movies that really
Uh-huh.
kind of push the boundaries. And then, but even by the end of 69, you're not getting a whole lot of blood in movies yet, still, like not much.
Yeah.
And the Wild Bunch just changes that very
Yep.
quickly. Like the Wild Bunch, Peckinpah's like, we're going for it. So he's probably most famous for that. And then he's also famous for Straw Dogs with Dustin
hmm
Hoffman that came out at the end of 71. We talked about that movie about a year ago. And that movie's really interesting in that it's basically just like a drama for an hour. It's just like about a couple and their marriage, and they move to this new place and they don't get along with some of the people in the town. And then it turns into this siege on their home for the last hour, and them just trying to, save their lives as like a group of these men are trying to bust into their home. And it's Hoffman in a way you've never seen him before, and it's really interesting, really good movie. And then he
Yeah.
makes
I
Junior
love that.
Bonner, which is like this very safe, tame, quiet character study that's not done very well, and it does not feel like a Peckinpah movie. So I guess I give
Hmm.
him points for trying that, but the movie wasn't successful. It didn't do well. And I mean, I don't know if they started shooting The Getaway in February of 72, which I read they did. It's not like Junior Bonner had come out yet. So it's not like Peckinpah was like, oh, well, this is clearly a bomb, so I have to make a more traditional genre movie. But he probably thought in the back of his mind, like, maybe after Junior Bonner, I should go do one that's a little bit more me and, something I'm known for. And that's definitely what we get with The Getaway. You can feel Peckinpah, his presence all over this movie.
Absolutely. I mean, just the intercutting dreamlike style that he does, they did so well with Wild Bunch.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure if that's in Junior Bonner or not, but
not much.
not really. No. So yeah, who knows where that departure was. But yeah, it's got his stamp all over.
It's like when I was in film school, we were in film school, and I made two horror films back to back. And then I made like a safe kind of quieter drama. And then I was like, this doesn't feel good. Let me make another horror film. Like, wait, have you ever tried to break away from like trying to do like a quiet character study drama, Jordan? Would that be in your wheelhouse?
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, I have the script that I want to do that with.
You've written one?
Yeah, well, I didn't write it. I have
okay.
a story by on it. I worked with a writer who was during the pandemic to do it, but yeah, I would love to. I love that. You know, some of my favorite movies, like David Lynch's The Straight Story. Like I love just the quiet little movies like that. Anything Alexander Payne, like I'm obsessed with. So yeah, I would love to do that. And that's what's great about something like Getaway is that it's not like those. However, it does kind of mash up some of those dramatic elements with the genre elements of a chase and of a shootout and that kind of stuff. And so, but yeah, I think to be able to flip flop, but if is not many people are really great at that, right? At mastering that. So I'll have to go and watch Junior Bonner because I'd be really curious to see what was. I mean, he also seemed to be a pretty heavy drinker, so maybe that his headspace wasn't. Who knows how much that was.
I don't know if I have in my notes, but there is a quote that's shared often where he says something like, I can't direct while sober anymore, or something like he had to be drunk. We talked about
Junior Bonner was sober.
Junior Bonner. I remember my guest brought up the fact he said he read that Peckinpah was always, he always had like a whiskey bottle next to him. He was always drinking throughout the day. I'm like, you can't direct a movie if you're just plastered.
Right? I think he probably hit an alcoholic on that level is not probably what we would think of as plastered, right? It's a very it's a functioning alcoholic, and I mean, he didn't live a very long life. I'm sure that played a part in it, but.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I read up on his life too a little bit, along with McQueen. Both of them were gone by 84. Like both of them died fairly young. And Ali MacGraw is still with us, which is cool.
And she's beautiful. Like gorgeous. At her age, I know. I was kind of going through and seeing who was still alive from the film. McQueen's end is really interesting. Just his battle with cancer and his trips to Mexico and stuff.
Did you read about that? That was crazy.
Yeah, I did. So, I'd say these guys kind of like, this was 72 and McQueen died in 80, if 80. That's correct.
At 50 years old.
Was at 50. So, this was one of, this was probably like both of them kind of coming together at the peak of the hype for them, because McQueen was becoming a huge box office draw and like getting paid boatloads of money, it seemed, in this zone right here.
Right.
So I think The Getaway is kind of and then it's the emergence of Walter Hill. So that combination of factors just led to a very special movie.
Yeah, I think it does go downhill not for Hill, but for the three main people involved with this movie. This is kind of the apex. After this, we get one more really great drama from Steve McQueen, Papillon, I think it's how you pronounce it, with Dustin Hoffman, a year later. And then he's the star of The Towering Inferno in 74, which was a big disaster movie. After The Towering Inferno, he doesn't make another movie that's a really big hit after that. And then I think Peckinpah has two more movies right after this that are kind of deemed as, really excellent part of his filmography. I don't think they made a lot of money. And then Ali MacGraw is the really weird one, in that she makes Love Story in 1970, gets an Oscar nomination. Love Story is the biggest hit of the whole year. I mean, that movie played, I think, for months and months and months and months. And we talked about that in the early days of the podcast. And Ryan O'Neal's solid in that movie, but Ali MacGraw is really fantastic in Love Story. And then 2 years later, she's in this. And then she's not in another movie for 6 more years. It's very strange. like this would seem like the 1-2 punch of Love Story and The Getaway. You think she would be one of the big box office stars of the 70s, but then she's not in a movie for 6 more years. So I was trying to read up on exactly why that happened. I couldn't find anything concrete. Some of it might have been the affair she had with Steve McQueen on the
Oh, I
set of
didn't
The
know about
Getaway.
that.
Did you know about
And
their
was she
relationship?
married to Robert
He was
Evans, the
married to
big
Robert
producer?
Evans, the
Yeah,
big Paramount producer guy.
yeah.
And she cheated on him with Steve McQueen. They got
Wow.
divorced. She married Steve McQueen in 1973, and they divorced in 1978, the year that she has her next movie. So, but they didn't have a child together, as far as I read. I didn't see, I don't think she was a mom. I'm curious to know, like, what went into her not being in a couple more movies in the mid 70s. Was it the falling out with Evans and him, like, what's the term, gaslight, or like what's the term where it's like
Blacklisting.
blacklisting, where
Yeah.
people would call, kind of like what Hitchcock did to Tippi Hedren in the mid 60s, where people would like call and they'd say, oh nope, they're busy or something. I don't know. I don't know what he could have done. It's not like she was under contract to him or something. So I don't know, but that's very strange to me, because she's really great in this, and it shows a different side to her physically than she showed in Love Story. So I mean, at least we get these two performances from MacGraw. Like, I'm happy that we get like the kind of the soapy romance, and then we get kind of the robbery kind of heist movie where she gets to show a little bit more of her like physical action in this one than she got to do in Love Story.
It's also interesting that the sort of the affair aspect is a part of this film's storyline with
right.
the powerful mob boss character. So it's kind of interesting that actually happened. They were dealing with that behind the scenes in real life.
Yeah, there's a lot of like double crossing in this movie. We should say a little bit about the story. So it's kind of it definitely has some similarities to Bonnie and Clyde, right? It's got that kind of like the two big stars, big movie stars, male lead and female lead, and they're, you know, robbing a bank, and there's double crossing, and there's, you know, someone's on their tail, and we don't know when they're going to strike. And it opens with Steve McQueen in prison, and it doesn't, like, the first moment in the movie, he's denied bail, like he's denied parole again, like he can't leave. But then there's like this, but then there's something struck behind the scenes that says, we'll let you out of prison, but you have to fulfill an obligation to carry out this robbery at a bank. And so he's like, he gets to leave, but he's still kind of in the midst of of all of these problems. But it's kind of like the one last robbery kind of story, right? But then that goes wrong.
Yeah, and they do such a good job of setting that up, because like I felt like there's kind of the Peckinpah, you're going between freeze frames and you're intercutting past, present, and future. And I love there's just like this machine grinding away, and this, I think maybe it's like a paper press or something that his prison job is.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just hearing this ching 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 ching, just the like routine of prison life. And you see him going and working in the fields and doing different tasks, and you get flashes of a picture of him and his wife, we haven't met her yet, on his wall. He's trying to do his hobbies, and it's basically just like he can't handle this anymore. And you finally kind of freeze on that moment of him being totally out of it and dejected. And then now we're kind of done with the Peckinpah like intercutting prologue to the movie, and then his wife shows up, and then now we get the feeling that, but they've done such a good job of making you have no idea who he is or his backstory, and you really never get that. But they did such a good job of making you feel for his dilemma, so that when she arrives with to visit with him, that you're like, okay, he's taking a job, one last job. Which those storylines are always interesting. The one last job movie, like you put it, they always works. I love the one last job concept.
I feel like, isn't that a part of like every Fast and the Furious? It's like one last ride, one last time, until the next one.
I think that is the tagline. 9 more rides. That should have been the tagline 9 years ago.
Yeah, but I love the editing of the opening. It really sets the scene. Like you get little flashes of backstory and a little bit, but not too much. Like it's just kind of over the opening credits. You're getting like these little flashes, and so they're being creative just already 2-3 minutes in. So that was cool. And then, you know, the relationship between MacGraw and McQueen in this is interesting, because it's not like he's like you know, immediately making out with her and like rushing her back home to get in bed. And it's a lot more subtle than that. And he's like trying to be kind of respectful of her. And then as we find out in a few more scenes, like she's also dealing with some double crossing of herself as we get to a scene early on in the movie where it looks like she might actually kill him. Right.
I know. Yeah. And like you said, that is really fascinating because I read somewhere I think it was just on IMDb trivia, that McQueen and Peckinpah kind of feuded a little bit because McQueen actually had final cut of The Getaway and,
Right.
and sort of switched out some takes in the editing process for scenes that he preferred how he looked in or whatever. But what's
Yeah.
really fascinating is that sort of conflicts with what you're saying, is that like McQueen comes back and gets out of prison, and normally you see the couple sort of like run to each other and they
Yeah.
crash into each other and they go home and have sex or whatever unfolds. But in this, there's like a hesitancy for them to even kiss, and like
Yeah.
there's definitely a disconnect what that prison in 4 years have driven them apart.
Yeah.
But there's some great writing there, and so it's really interesting that Steve McQueen played sort of this I guess standoffish guy that doesn't jump all over the girl. He gets her in the end, but it doesn't happen right away. Like he's kind of nervous to
Yeah,
get in
that
bed
scene
with
in the
her.
bed, like we see her bare back and she's the
Uh-huh.
one kind of coming on to him saying it'll make you feel good, and he's like, "Oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
been a long time. I don't know." you know.
I
And I thought
know.
that was
Yeah,
like for a Steve McQueen, big A-list movie star, macho guy. I was like, it's an interesting character development here that you wouldn't expect from him.
exactly. I love that. There's the little touch. There's a great moment then the next morning when he does feel a little more comfortable. He wakes up and now they're making breakfast, and he's
That was
got on
so
this blue
disgusting.
robe.
That
That
was so
breakfast.
gross when he was making the
What
eggs on
was
the skillet and he squirts that ketchup all over while it's still cooking in the skillet. I can understand once you put on the plate and you put some, but he's like squirting it all over the skillet while it's still cooking in the thing. And I'm like, what's happening right now?
that's prison cooking, I guess maybe
Prison
he's.
cooking.
But
Did you get this?
she takes the tag off of his robe, and it's
Right.
just like great. I mean, maybe that was in the novel because I know we didn't say it yet, but this is actually based on a book.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
but uh, but
Let's talk a little bit
that's such a
about
great detail.
before we get more into like the big scenes of the movie, let's talk a little bit about the backstory. So, Steve McQueen, he had been encouraging his publicist named David Foster to enter the film industry as a producer, while McQueen was making a 1971 film called Le Mans, Lemans. I have not seen that one. Foster acquired the rights to Jim Thompson's crime novel, The Getaway. I don't know what year that was published. I'm assuming it's fairly close to this. I don't think it's like a 1947 book, right?
Yeah,
Probably
I don't
just a
know.
few years before this came out. So Foster sent McQueen a copy of the book, urging him to do it. Foster looked for a director, and he decided on Peter Bogdanovich to be the director of The Getaway. Bogdanovich's agent set up a special screening of his client's very soon to be released The Last Picture Show. So that movie came out in October of 71. So this probably was like in the summer of 71 or something. And then McQueen and Foster went to see the movie. They loved the movie. I love it too. It's my next to Willy Wonka. It's my favorite film of 1971. I think it's just a brilliant movie. And so they met with Bogdanovich. They wanted him to come on. A deal was reached, Jordan. He was doing it. He was going to direct The Getaway. But then Warner Brothers approached Bogdanovich with an offer to direct What's Up, Doc, a screwball romantic comedy with Barbra Streisand. And there was the stipulation that Bogdanovich had to start that movie right away. And that movie would come out in March of 72. So just like 5 months after Last Picture Show, What's Up, Doc comes out. So he went like right into What's Up, Doc. And Bogdanovich wanted to do both, but the studio refused. When McQueen heard that he was thinking about doing What's Up, Doc first, he became upset and told Bogdanovich, we're going to go with someone else. We'll find someone else. And he had just worked with Peckinpah on Junior Bonner. So he approached Peckinpah and said, would you like to direct The Getaway? And Peckinpah had read the book. He just happened to have read it. and said, yeah, I read that book. I think it'd make a great movie. Let's do it. So that's how Peckinpah came on board. Junior Bonner made it so that Peckinpah did The Getaway, I think.
Interesting.
So it's
So
going to
they
be
enjoyed their
yeah. So they I think they both knew that it wasn't really their best work. They knew it wasn't going to be a big hit, but they enjoyed working together on Junior Bonner. If they didn't, then I don't think McQueen would have gone to Peckinpah. I think that would have been like, well, let's keep looking. But it's watching this movie and knowing Bogdanovich's early film career, I can't imagine what this movie would have looked like directed by Bogdanovich. It would not have looked the way it came out. There is all of the violent scenes. There is no way it would have looked like that under Bogdanovich. So that's really interesting, like a what if scenario. Like, what would this movie have looked like? I think it would have been more quieter character scenes and maybe like one or two kind of big action scenes. But even though, like, the way that Peckinpah uses slow motion and close-ups on blood and explosions, I don't think Bogdanovich would have gone there. I'd be curious to see what this would have looked like under him. Would have been good, I think.
Yeah,
it would have been different.
Yeah, probably not quite as. I mean, maybe it would feel a little more dated now watching it, whereas The Getaway doesn't. It really doesn't feel that dated.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff does, but for the most part, it really holds your attention the way modern movies still should as well.
Yeah. I mean, Bogdanovich had made his first movie called Targets from '68, starring Boris Karloff. That's kind of a genre movie, kind of a thriller. It has some scene. There's scenes of a guy shooting other people like from a distance with a sniper rifle. And so it's not like Bogdanovich had never done anything to do with like action or suspense. He had done one. But if you look at Bogdanovich's career in film, like all the way the rest of his life, he didn't really touch on that genre ever again. So The Getaway would have been a rare outing there. Whereas I feel like Peckinpah is a much better fit for this material. Like if you look at The Wild Bunch, especially, like this feels more up his alley. So I'm glad everything worked out the way it did, because What's Up, Doc is also a really great movie too. Very highly recommended. We talked about that in March with Alonso Duralde. Really fun screwball romantic comedy, a rare screwball romantic comedy of the 1970s. With Barbara Streisand and Ryan O'Neal. That one was really fun too, and nothing like The Getaway. So
yeah,
I think
even though
Bogdanovich,
there's a character called Doc.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Bogdanovich made the right choice there. And also, Straw Dogs didn't do very well at the box office. I think The Wild Bunch was successful. Straw Dogs wasn't a big hit. Junior Bonner was a huge bomb. So Peckinpah also took The Getaway because he wanted to make a movie that he thought could be a big hit. And it was. Mm-hmm. It was one of the top 10 grossers of 72, The Getaway. Is that surprising?
No, not at all. I mean, it would have had to have been. I mean, and especially you have been studying this year in history. Mm-hmm. Is it one of the more action-packed things that had come out?
Oh, yeah.
By the fall of 1972?
Yeah, so this is the strangest year, Jordan, because it opens with a bang. Not only with What's Up, Doc, but also we get The Godfather and Cabaret by the end of March. And then there's this like long slog of 3 to 4 months where there's not much of interest between like April to June. We get some good stuff over the summer. I think Frenzy by Alfred Hitchcock's really interesting. And I really loved Deliverance, which was like the big kind of summer blockbuster movie, Deliverance. Kind of a thriller with Jon Voight and Burt Reynolds. And then Last House is August of 72. And Last House on the Left is like one of the few movies I've looked at for the last 6 months that really does feel like it came out in 72. Whereas a lot of the movies I've looked at this year kind of play it safe and feel like they could have come out in 66. Wouldn't have really changed that much. I've been taken with the films that are pushing the medium forward and are not playing it safe, giving me something new. And that can be in violence, that can be in just the pacing and the editing and the style or whatever. Like Deliverance felt very much alive and very, very much a lot of energy, in the same way I got energy in The Getaway. Like The Getaway is maybe one of 10 films I've looked at this year that very much feels like it's of its year. it doesn't feel like a movie that would have come out in 66. Like this feels like it had to come out at this time with these two people by this director. I think this was the right time for this movie. And it's not one of the greatest movies of the year, you know? There's not like a whole lot going on underneath the surface in terms of like the characters where I'm like, wow, this is a masterpiece movie. But in terms of its genre and in terms of like what you expect out of this movie, it succeeds in every way.
Absolutely. And just moves very quickly. I mean,
Yeah.
you're only in the prison for a little bit, and then he's only out and free for a very little bit until he gets the job opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're planning the heist. And one of the best strengths of this movie, I think, is the amount of twists and turns and
Mm-hmm.
setbacks. It just keeps on coming. And
Yeah.
even when it's not orchestrated, like there's a whole great sequence of kind of a con man stealing their money,
Yeah.
and that isn't orchestrated from the top, from the boss. It's just sort of like bad luck that
Happens.
they
Yeah.
ran into this guy. So it's so great because there's so many elements that just continue to keep pushing it forward and keeping the suspense going. And that's probably one of the biggest strengths of it, and why it feels like you're saying that it just moves so quick and that it's so entertaining.
Yeah, you can never really trust anyone. I mean, I always felt like I could trust McQueen. Like he felt like a character I could I could like understand. But MacGraw, she's so kind of like she's so angelic and young and pretty, and like you don't get the sense that she could double cross anyone. So we get to that scene with Ben Johnson, and he's sitting in his chair, and McQueen walks in, and MacGraw comes in after him, and she points the gun at McQueen, and I'm like, wait, is she gonna shoot McQueen? Like, what's going on here? And then
Mm-hmm.
she just blows Ben Johnson away in a fantastic moment. I was like, because the Ben Johnson character in Junior Bonner was annoying, and then he's even more annoying in this movie. So when she blows him, I was like, oh, this is fantastic.
And that's kind of the first real taste of Peckinpah there, with the slow motion. He goes crashing back through a coffee table. The bright red paint blood comes spilling out of
I'm like, would her gun
jacket.
have that much force that he's just like flipped onto his back like that? That's a pretty powerful weapon. Like she doesn't have like a giant shotgun.
Well, if that bothers you, the Walter Hill movie Last Man Standing is loaded. Like that's the most launching of human bodies I've ever seen in anything, which is amazing. But
Last Man Standing, there's just like a little Bruce Willis, right? He's the star of that.
Yeah.
He's got a little revolver, and it shoots a guy, and it just goes like flying into the air,
flying out the window through a wall. Yeah, it's great.
Quentin Tarantino, Kill Bill action of just like
Kill
flying.
Bill, exactly.
That's a Tarantino thing, like in the end of Django, like it's not, it's never just a gunshot. It's like full on, like, plowed against the wall kind of a thing. But yeah, so I thought that was good. And then the robbery scene itself is really great. Lots of good tension. I mean, how many robbery scenes have we watched over the year? I mean, there's so many.
Sure.
I think the opening of The Dark Knight has really set the standard for that kind of a scene. And I mean, even Bonnie and Clyde, which was 5 years before this, was really revolutionary. And I mean, 67 was showing blood. There's a shot in that movie where they shoot a guy. They're driving along, and a guy's trying to get into the car, and they shoot the window, and you see his like whole face light up with blood. For 67 was kind of it was unheard of. And that movie has a ton of robbery scenes, but even still, Place Beyond the Pines with Ryan Gosling, that's another good movie with some one or two robbery scenes. But I still thought the tension worked really well in The Getaway, and that it's long, and something's bad's gonna happen. This isn't just gonna go off without a hitch. That this is like the last time McQueen has to do this. So you're like, well, we're 30 minutes in, so there's 90 minutes left, so something's gonna go awry here. And not McQueen, but one of the other guys shoots and kills, right? The guard who's on the ground.
Yeah, so when they do the robbery, he's got two henchmen that has sort of been assigned to him.
Right.
But McQueen is the best in the business, we gather. So he doesn't really, he's the guy in charge there. But yeah, one of his guys shoots the guard, and kind of gets, fidgety trigger finger, and the guard's kind of going for his gun. So he's sort of there's reason for it.
Right.
But there's a double cross within those two henchmen and what they were going to do to McQueen. They were going to throw him under the bus at some point too. So
yeah,
it's in that moment that we introduce my favorite character of the movie, which is Rudy Butler,
played by Al
one
Lettieri.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, this part for him was so good and so well written. This is, to me, the thing that like elevates this into a league of its own as far as these kinds of getaway heist type of movies is his scenes. But but yeah, they kill the guard, and then now things have started to go wrong. The heist is not gonna go according to plan.
Yeah, so Al Lettieri, who's in one other very famous film from '72. Did you read what the other one was?
The Godfather.
The Godfather.
Yeah, I recognize him from it.
He died of a heart attack in 1975.
Yeah, I know.
So he's gone 3 years after this, and he's in two classic films from '72. Of course, he's a part of that, that restaurant scene in The Godfather with Pacino, which is just like, one of the most iconic scenes of all time. And then here, and it happens so quickly. Like the robbery goes awry right at the end. They're almost out. And then Rudy shoots the other henchman in the crotch. Is that where he shoots him?
Yeah. We haven't really set up. I mean, by the end of it, you realize Rudy is off. The guy is unhinged, and he's a bit silly. Like he treats violence with a sort of like, dark evil grin on his face. So yeah, you're first introduced to that simply through him shooting this guy that made the mistake, which we don't really know why he's killing him, if it's because the guy messed up or is because Rudy actually was going to take the money for himself. We're not sure yet, but he just takes the gun out and shoots the guy in the crotch a couple of times, and then shoots him in the head or somewhere in the body,
and pushes him out of the car
and dumps him out of the car.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Doc's wife, Carol, has planted bombs around the city to detonate to basically distract the police, so that the police are going in 4 different directions to put out the fires instead of chasing them. So it's got a lot of fun heist elements, and them having to cut the power lines and things that we've seen before, and stuff like the Italian Job and whatnot. But but I just like how they did it, and it definitely feels fitting to the 70s that you could get away with a bank robbery in the way that they do. Nowadays, I don't buy that any of that stuff would necessarily work, but
it is weird to watch like these older films. You're like, would the cops just be showing up to the dead body and not noticing like all of these other things happening around them at the same time? But it happens very quickly. We get like the shooting of the guard, the shooting of the other henchman, and then that crazy moment where McQueen and MacGraw are driving away, and they are a little bit late, so they hit the explosion right as it's happening, and he loses control of the car, and they just like crash into a house.
It was awesome. Yeah,
I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
And MacGraw is just kind of looking annoyed, like, what are you doing? And he just goes, shit. I love that. And then he still pulls away.
At that time?
Isn't he driving?
I think he is, because she actually can hold her own behind the wheel for a lot of the movie.
She drives in a lot of the movies.
Driver.
Yeah.
But yeah, in that moment, I forget how they got switched around. But yeah, that's a great getaway moment.
Yeah. So that's like that. I mean, like that 2-3 minutes was the most probably exciting action filmmaking I've watched this whole year, outside of maybe Deliverance. I mean, that was like, I was like, there is a lot of things happening here, and the handheld of the camera and the energy there was unlike anything I've looked at for the podcast in a while. So I was really excited there. That was like just well structured. You knew exactly where everyone was and what was happening and why this explosion was going off, and their delay, and just like him, like, like just completely losing control of the car. I thought that worked really well. And then it's after that they blow Ben Johnson away. Like that's the next part, right? I think that's after.
Yeah,
this.
they go.
I think
actually, there's that whole great like farmhouse scene where we realize
after that,
Rudy the double cross. So they get through that explosion, drive out to some secluded property.
Yeah.
And
They're by
Rudy's
themselves.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And Rudy basically, pulls a gun, and McQueen pulls a gun, and McQueen shoots Rudy, who's wearing the flak jacket that he earlier said, I don't need a flak jacket. I've gone through however many robberies. I don't need a bulletproof vest, but he's wearing it in this moment now. Mm-hmm. And doesn't, so he's not going to die when McQueen hits him with 4 shots in the chest or whatever.
And then Rudy says something before he pulls the trigger, right? He's like, "Your time is up."
Yeah.
And in those 4 or 5 words he says, that gives McQueen the second he needs to draw his gun and shoot him first.
Right.
Exactly. Like Rudy just had to have the last word, right? If he had just shot, he probably would have killed McQueen's character, Doc.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. He said, I forget what it was. Your time is up.
It's something like your time is up. But then what's really weird is then McQueen walks over and it looks like Rudy's dead. And then Doc fires 2 more shots, and one is like at his head, but it just misses, right? It like hits like the dirt. Yeah. And then he shoots again, and it looks like it connects with his shoulder.
Right.
So like a little blood comes down, and then McQueen's like, okay, got him, and walks away. And it's like, maybe should have, hold it, the end of Scream 2, right? Just to be sure. No, what is just in case.
Just in case.
Get him in the head, McQueen. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. He misses, which becomes absolutely important to then Rudy's story now, because he has a bullet wound in his shoulder that needs to be treated, which sets up his whole journey.
His whole story.
But I did think that little detail was interesting, that McQueen clearly walked over there aiming for the headshot to basically to guarantee that this guy's done.
Yeah.
But he missed, and then sort of accepted the shoulder shot. Now maybe he thought that it was a headshot, or just that, it was the final blow that he needed. He had no idea that the guy was wearing a vest, but
right.
But then they go to the scene that you're talking about, where they then go and meet. They have the cash, and he and MacGraw take it in and deliver it, and we start to realize then that there was other layers to the double cross.
Yeah, like that Doc is alive by the end of that scene. It's like everybody's double crossing this guy. Everybody. How is he alive? That's great. He's very lucky. He's trying to shoot him. He's trying to kill him.
Incredibly lucky.
MacGraw, Carol, she can't do it. Can't. She's like, this guy is way too sexy. I am not. I'm gonna kill Ben Johnson.
Yeah. And the other information that they reveal there is that, which is again going to be part of their relationship now, is that she slept with Ben Johnson order to get him to change the parole board's mind on letting McQueen out of jail in the first place. And that's because we never earlier, when she goes to meet him, we cut away before we see what she's going to have to provide, if it's money or something else. But McQueen doesn't know that, and he doesn't like that either.
Yeah, exactly. So before we get into some more of the later scenes, let's talk a little bit more of the behind the scenes here. So Jim Thompson was hired to adapt his own novel. Like, he took a stab at the screenplay. He worked on it for 4 months, and he changed some of the scenes. He didn't just do a scene by scene adaptation of his book, and they weren't really happy with the finished script. So he was fired and replaced by Walter Hill, who came on board. Hill wrote his script in just a little over a month, and that's the script that they went with. And it looked like Ally MacGraw was not like the first choice, but when they started mentioning her name, I think it might have been McQueen even, who said, I think she would be right for this. I think because Love Story came out in December of 1970, was a huge hit, Oscar nomination. I mean, I think that movie was playing in theaters at least into summer of 1971, if not later. And then if they started shooting The Getaway in February of 1972, MacGraw must have been getting some offers and was on the list, and probably was like thinking, like, what should be my perfect follow-up? And probably would not want to do something that's in the same genre, the same kind of character. Like, it made sense that she would have wanted to do something a little bit outside the box and work with like a Peckinpah and a McQueen, like on an action film. So she came on board, although she said she was scared to do it because she wasn't so sure about McQueen and Peckinpah. She described them, their reputations, as wild, two-fisted beer guzzlers. That was their reputation, apparently, in Hollywood in 1971, early 72. But as soon as she came on board, she was happy because she had an immediate, instant attraction to Steve McQueen. And at this point, she was married to Robert Evans. So McQueen had recently separated. I don't know if he was married or he was with a woman right before, but when they started shooting The Getaway, he was single. She was with Evans. And she said he was recently separated and free, and I was scared of my overwhelming attraction to him. Did you get a sense watching the movie, Jordan, that like could you see that mutual attraction by the actors in the movie, or did that just kind of bleed into the characters? Like, did you get a sense like you could feel like that real life attraction between them at all?
Honestly, no.
I didn't either.
There's kind of a weird. I mean, there's kind of just more of a weird platonic professional relationship that they have. I mean, they show them being physical and kissing earlier, but like you get more of a sense that she's just a worthy sidekick to him than just a total love interest, which is interesting for the movie. But no, I did not really sense that like their characters were fawning over one another, or that the actors really were. So it's interesting that she was talking about that attraction, because I don't really see it on screen as much as you would think.
Yeah, I knew about that before I started watching it, so I was kind of looking for it in the movie. I'm like, is there a moment or a scene where like they're going out of body, like out of character, and like you can see but no, like I feel like I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I feel like there are some examples of movies where they fell in love on the shoot, and you can kind of see it in the movie, and I didn't feel that in this. I don't know if it was just the nature of the storyline, and there wasn't like enough scenes to deliver that kind of attraction, but like it felt like I was just watching actors in a movie. I didn't get the sense like they were pining after each other in every scene. I didn't see that. So that was, I thought was,
me neither.
I thought that was interesting. So yeah, so after they shoot Ben Johnson to death, then the movie kind of splits, right? Then the rest of the movie, we get these two storylines. We get McQueen and MacGraw and their adventures and trying to deliver money and having all these problems. And then we also get Rudy's story with the great Sally Struthers from All in the Family as kind of his love interest for a while. And she's like this kind of bubbly, kind of great addition to the movie, and is very funny. And a punch to the face at the end was pretty fantastic.
Like, there's a few punches to women in this movie that would not fly.
Which I'm like, I think if they made this movie now, which we always talk about, like how would this movie look differently in today, I think the punch to the face of Sally Struthers, I feel like that one maybe could stay, but the scene that of McQueen slapping MacGraw for a minute, like he does it like 14 times. And I mean, you know, she held a gun to his back and was about to shoot him. So, you know, maybe like one slap or something, but like he's talking to her, he's yelling at her, and he's slapping her around, and she's crying and going like this, and it's very uncomfortable to watch. And I'm like, that would not fly today. Right?
No, that one wouldn't. The other one, I suppose you could argue if it's even more forgiving in the context of this, because the character is this wild man kind of guy, Rudy.
Yeah,
that guy would do that. The McQueen thing just felt unnecessarily long, and
and really drawn out. And I'm thinking to myself, wait, okay, so she's falling in love with Steve McQueen on the set of this movie. That must have been a weird scene for Ali MacGraw to film.
Yeah, and
I yelling at her and slapping her.
I read that it was somewhat or entirely improvised. She didn't know it was coming.
Oh, okay. It looks real. It doesn't look like they're fake slaps.
No, I think he made contact. He had to have. She was probably genuinely kind of freaked out. But they got married, so obviously it wasn't like, she didn't hold it against him forever.
A lot of movie romances are on the set, and then once the final shot wraps, like then it's over. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
classic Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford on the first Star Wars. He
Mm-hmm.
was married and she was having an affair with Harrison Ford on the set, and then as soon as they wrapped filming, then that was it. At least that's what she talked about in her diaries published right before her death in 2016. But then sometimes it lasts, like it goes beyond the filming. They probably wrapped this movie by what, April, May of 1972, and then they got married the next year and they were together for 5 years. And I read a piece about how McQueen was going to be in the movie Sorcerer from 77, directed by William Friedkin.
That movie's amazing.
But something to do with MacGraw. He wanted MacGraw to be a part of the production, and Friedkin said no. And so McQueen dropped out of the movie and was replaced by Roy Scheider, who was hot off of Jaws at the time. But like even in 76, 77, like McQueen was thinking about like, how can I bring MacGraw with me on the shoot and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I'm sure she came with him on a lot of those shoots. He was in, I think, a movie a year at least throughout the 1970s. So she was probably there with him on most of them. Why wasn't she making one herself? I don't know.
Interesting. I think I prefer actually Roy Scheider for that role, but it would have.
I've never seen Sorcerer. I've never seen it.
Oh, you'll love it. You'll love it.
5 years from
you'll
now.
love it. Yeah.
It's hard. It's like if the movie's like, if there's a movie I'm thinking of watching and it came out between like 73 and 77, I'm like, well, I'll just wait. I'll get to it. Yeah. I'll get to it at some point. But so the movie, it's doing some of these interesting things with narrative, with storytelling. I feel like some screenwriter directors, like they might have just focused on the McQueen story, maybe have like a brief glimpse as to what Rudy's up to, but the movie's interested in Rudy, like what's going on with him, and it's not like he's just like a man, like a villainous man on a mission, and he's just like enraged every scene after that, and I'm gonna kill this guy. Like there's a lot of just like quiet moments with him and Struthers, and she's just like laying on him in bed, and he's just like, he's got his arm in a cast, and you're like, what is happening right now? This is great. This is like nice character moment.
It's so funny. I thought it was like it was so unexpected that this movie would become as genuinely funny, to me at least, that the Rudy scenes did. So for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, the gist is that we talked about Rudy gets shot by McQueen earlier in the shoulder and he needs medical attention. So he drives, freakishly down the road and basically finds the first thing he comes to, which is a vet office out in the middle of the country, goes and honks on the car horn, and two vets come out, a husband and a wife. They patch him up, and there's a great moment where like you don't see him going through surgery, you just see the aftermath of him with the bandages. And since they're a vet, he has a kitten on his chest, and he's like he's basically got them hostage, stroking a little kitten on his chest, which is so hilarious and so fun for that character to do, because he's kind of an unhinged, scary kind of buffoon guy. But then then he basically says, well, McQueen and MacGraw are trying to get down to Mexico, to the border. I've got to beat them there, but I can't drive with this wound, and I need to replace my bandages. So I'm going to force this husband-wife vet couple to take me down to this hotel where I can get there ahead of McQueen and MacGraw. And over the course of that, he is forming a relationship with the vet's wife, and she's kind of attracted to his insanity because her husband is just a very boring kind of guy. And so there's these car scenes where they're like eating food and they're doing food fights, and just those scenes are so funny and interesting to this movie, because you get the pursuit of a villain pushing their characters forward and hot on their tails, but it's done with humor, which is not necessarily always the case for something like this.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I'm like, there's two ways you could do it the way it's done in the movie. You could also do it the way of the Rudy character is much more of a threat, and you don't see him for 20 minutes, and all of a sudden, like he shows up at the train station or something and comes after him, and it's just like a ruthless killing machine. Every time we see Rudy, he's like, to Doc, you're going down. I'm going to get you. If not right now, the next time I see you. And that's not, he's not like this ruthless killing machine. He's just like, okay, I'm gonna work myself back to mend myself back to health here, and then once I'm ready, I'm gonna take this guy down. But it is a little bit more funny than you'd imagine it would
Hmm.
be in a movie like this.
Absolutely, yeah. He has fun on this, whereas McQueen is pretty serious. You
Yeah.
only really see him smile at the very end. He's pretty serious the whole time. Everyone else is very serious. The Ben Johnson like brother and there, because there's kind of two pursuers on their tail, but Rudy is, he's loving life, and he just loves the chaos, and
Yeah.
to somehow just dismantle anything that's normal.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
he yeah, you
But
could do, like you said, yeah, the more serious approach, but I
I
prefer
don't.
this
Yeah, I
for.
don't know. I don't. I think the serious approach and the more ruthless nature of Rudy in the second half could have worked,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I think the movie's more creative and unique for taking that option of like, no, let's just like spend time with this guy and all of his foibles and like his relationship with this
Hmm.
blonde, this ditzy
Yeah.
blonde, and it's more interesting. I mean,
Hmm.
there's so many movies made with this kind of a story. It's like you just want to do the same thing. So
Right.
that gives it something unique, I think, that you would get in another like heist movie like this. And
Absolutely.
and that scene you mentioned is my favorite one, at least in the second half with Rudy, when they're eating, she's like eating the ribs, aren't they
Yeah.
ribs? And it's like so like cute and like fun, and then she starts throwing them at him and he throws them at her, and it's like light,
Hmm.
and it's like you're watching a romantic comedy, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden he has this turn, and then he starts just like getting really angry and throwing them really hard, and you see Sally Struthers, she's been smiling and laughing, and she just like goes completely still as he continues to throw 5 or 6 ribs at her head,
Yeah.
and one like hits like almost the camera, like it hits like the windshield of the car, and it like splatters over the camera, and then
Hmm.
Peckinpah just keeps the shot rolling, and Sally Struthers is looking just very uncomfortable, and she's like, I'm sorry, and it's like that's like the perfect example of a villain in a movie like this is someone who has a light side but then can just turn for no reason.
Exactly. I love that. I know. I thought that was one of my favorite character scenes of any of the characters
Yeah.
in the movie, because it did start as ridiculously silly and light, and it basically flips because he throws the first rib
Yeah,
and she's kind of annoyed because it gets onto her dress.
you're right.
And then the moment he turns is when he's not instigating anymore, when it has almost like become her idea
Yeah.
to push the insanity onto him, and now that character is like, I'm not in control anymore, and it's not,
Hmm.
now it's serious. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm instigating, then fine, we can have fun with
Yeah.
this. But I thought that was so well, and the husband the whole time is just trying his best to ignore them and like just drive and
Yeah, the
fucking
driver
focus.
doesn't change. He like when they're laughing and having a good time, and when he's in the back getting angry, the driver's face doesn't change. He's just like,
Yep.
he's
He's
like
and his fate is pretty pretty
dismal.
hilarious in
Yeah,
its own
yeah,
way.
exactly.
Dismal, but
And,
yeah,
and
that scene was great.
and then we get that great scene at the train station. I thought that worked really well. I like that it was
Hmm.
mostly free of dialogue. I wrote like this is the most like Hitchcockian scene of the movie because we're getting a lot of storytelling through the camera and through like the mood of it rather than like having lots and lots of talk. Like I thought that
Hmm.
worked really well in the scene, and like her putting in the bag and getting the wrong key and more kind of double crossing it kind of for about 5 minutes. It felt to me like a little bit of a Hitchcockian moment in the movie, like where we're not
Yeah,
just getting like spoon fed all the dialogue we need.
yeah, exactly. And that's that, going back to the, like, this is the first, one of the first, but there's a few other instances of that like conflict that just comes, unfortunate to them for being in this position and having this very valuable bag, but this con man didn't even know what he was getting. What's interesting, I read that con man was originally going to play Rudy.
Oh, okay.
So how different would that be? But they swapped it at the end. I forget why, because they felt
That
like it
happened.
worked better as the con man. But that was, like you said, that's a good way of putting it. I didn't think of it like that, but it is very dialogue free, very Hitchcockian. Just a well made sort of chase
Hmm.
with the you know, with
With the guy who has the bag, right?
the guy who has the bag, exactly.
So I thought that sequence worked really well. Like, what were your negatives about the movie? Like, for me, I felt I wanted a little bit more complexity to the Doc Carol relationship. I felt like there could have been another couple quieter scenes with them. Like it felt to me by the end, I was like really invested in just kind of the action genre-ness of the movie more so than I was about them as like people. I almost felt like the movie gave us more about Rudy and kind of his, his complexities as a person more so than Doc and Carol. Like I was like trying to think like what could the movie be doing to help with this, but I just felt like I didn't know a whole lot about them and their
Hmm.
backstories that I would have liked. Like whereas in
Yeah,
Bonnie and Clyde, you really get a sense of who those two people are, how they are together, how they are apart, what they want. It's always very clear to me when I'm watching Bonnie and Clyde, which is a movie I've seen many times. Whereas The Getaway, I felt like their characters were a little bit more flat than Bonnie and Clyde, but that's kind of a
yeah,
minor quibble. I don't know. I felt like there could
yeah.
have
I
been
would
more
agree.
complexity.
I would agree. If you had to sort of point a finger at something that could be stronger, it would be
Mm-hmm.
that you don't really know. You don't really know their history, how long they'd been together prior to his jail sentence, what
Right.
exactly I think they said on the parole board what he did to go to prison. But you don't really know. And I guess the reason why that's important is because in the end, if they are to get away, you definitely sense that Steve McQueen is just kind of like worn down from years of doing this job and being in
Prison.
jail,
Mm-hmm.
and needs and wants some kind of freedom or stability with his relationship. But you don't really feel that at the end because you don't really know how long he's been stuck in this
Mm-hmm.
rut or this career. You really
Right.
don't ever get any of those answers. So
Yeah.
I would say that as much as it is a fast-paced fun movie, maybe even just one scene somewhere would have helped give us a little bit more backstory that would have helped.
Yeah, even I would say even more so McGraw as Carol. Like I feel like there's something off, there's something missing from her character. I felt like I wanted like one moment in the movie where she sits and like tells us something or like has like some sort of a moment. I didn't want her to
Mm-hmm.
just be the girl. Like I wanted a little bit more complexity with her. The way she's got that really great complicated character in Love Story, her film before this. I was like, I know it's a genre film and it's really great in so many respects, but I felt like her character could have been a little richer and there could have been something more to her, like her backstory or something that we could have gotten that made me care more about her. I don't know. I felt like
Yeah.
she's bringing it as an actress what she needs to do, but I just felt like there was a little something lacking with her. But that's in a movie like this, it's kind of minor. I'm just always looking for something. What could how could this be even better? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they could have stopped somewhere along their route with a family member to hold
Yeah,
to stay a night or something. So you go into
have a
somebody
couple
who would have
scenes. I feel like there was room for a couple
exactly.
scenes where we learned a little bit more about them as characters, and I was kind of hungering for that in the second half, and we don't really get that. But
Hmm.
I mean, it's 2 hours. We don't want it to be 2.5. It's okay. But
Yeah,
there was that, and then I thought the trash compactor scene went on a little too long, and there wasn't really any stakes or suspense there. There's one moment you think, oh, they're going to get smashed, but then the machine turns back and but they don't even look scared. Did you notice that? Like they're
yeah,
sitting in that trash compactor and there's like this giant metal wall
yeah,
coming at them. And then Peckinpah cuts to their reactions and they're not even scared or panicked in any way. Wouldn't they be screaming or something?
I know. Yeah,
Or
that was
trying to
an
get out, like
interesting.
doing this, like trying to get out? Like they're just like sitting there. I'm like, what's happening right now? Like, would you just be sitting there, Jordan, not having any expression?
I'd be pretty scared. I mean, if you're inside a trash compactor, I mean, and the trash in this movie was like they were picking up like carpet scraps and
Yeah.
textiles, like nothing gross. So normally you'd be freaked
Yeah.
out because, like you said, there's a giant battering ram coming at you,
Coming
but
at you.
also because it smells god awful in there and is you're in trash, so it'd be pretty horrific death. But theirs
Yeah.
was fairly clean and they weren't really as freaked out as you'd expect. But I guess metaphorically, it's just that they're at the lowest point,
Right.
possible. They're within the they're in the gutter, in the trash at this point in their and
Yes.
in their journey, and then they get dumped out in the
Yeah.
sort of like in the actual trash dump out in the middle of a big field. And they
Yeah.
kind of have one of the very few little character moments that
Right.
you're talking about happens there in that dump.
Hmm. And you don't see them really fall out. I'm like, I don't think MacGraw and McQueen are actually being dumped out of this. Like, that would be a surprise. But they are, like, for a lot of that sequence, like they're like, combing through trash and like trying to get like like this
Yeah.
would have been an interesting day of filming for these two major actors. Like, all right, today we're wading through trash on the set of The Getaway. MacGraw's like, wait, why did I sign up for this? What's happening right now? I'd prefer to
Sure,
just
it
be
was clean.
dying in Love Story. That's where I want to be. But
Yeah.
so there's that sequence, and then that kind of takes us to the last like major sequence where there's a lot of tension, and we get a total Wild Bunch like shootout at is it
Yep.
like a motel at the end?
Yeah,
And
it seems like it's a hotel that
they
they've used because Rudy, like some sort of a safe house that's part of their getaway network that
yeah,
they've used before, because he knows the hotel manager, Rudy knows where to go, and the
mhm,
other people pursuing also know where to go.
right,
But it's a motel that bad guys use,
mhm,
to probably as a means to cross the border if you're being
yeah.
pursued. Um,
I love that part where Struthers is knocking on the door and she's like, "Room service." I have
yeah,
to deliver food. And MacGraw's like, "Oh, I'm naked and my husband's in the shower. Can you just leave it there?" And then Rudy's like pushing against her, like, "No, we gotta get in."
yeah,
And she's like, "Oh no. It's required that I have to come in and have you sign something."
yeah.
That's a very funny scene. I thought Struthers there was very funny.
Oh, hilarious! And she was kind of actually, you got a glimpse of like her and Rudy would actually be a formidable team for their own solo project if they survived this
Yeah,
film.
yeah, a spin-off
Uh,
movie.
yeah, but yeah,
She
that was a
doesn't
very
die,
funny
right? She
moment.
just gets punched in the nose. And does she run
Just
out
gets
screaming? She's like,
Yeah,
"Ah!"
she's like screaming, and when the other guys come through, they're like, "Shut up, broad," or they say
Shut
something.
up.
It's like
Just like
I forget what
so demeaning, to
something
this
bad.
woman. This
Yeah,
poor woman just is getting punched and she's like being used the whole movie, and then she's getting yelled at as she runs away screaming. It's not the greatest depiction of women in this movie.
no, it's definitely of its time in that
Like
sense.
MacGraw's
The
character is a little bit more fleshed out, but even still with her, it's not quite, she's not, oftentimes she's just kind of like going with him. I mean, she'll be driving the car and
Mhm.
some of these things, but I didn't get like a major sense of agency from Carol that I get from Bonnie and Bonnie and Clyde. Like sometimes it felt like
True.
she was just kind of like okay, what does Doc need me to do in this moment, kind of a thing. And
Yeah, she's
then
ultimately kind of just deferring to what he tells her to do. She's not really pushing back
yeah,
a
and
ton.
then Sally
Yeah,
Struthers, her name is Fran. It's not,
Fran.
I mean, I guess she's having a good time. There's that. She's not just like screaming and scared the whole movie. She's just like kind of like going along for this ride. But
Yeah.
but 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 Doc comes out like another door, right? He comes out into the hallway and approaches them,
Hmm.
and he's the one who punches Fran, right? Like she's like screaming in his face, like yelling at something, and isn't
Yeah,
it
actually, you're right.
McQueen?
You're right. It's not
Doesn't
Rudy, like I said
doesn't
earlier. Yeah,
McQueen
yeah, you're
doesn't
right.
McQueen punch her in the nose and
Yeah,
like not he knocks her
McQueen sneaks
unconscious?
out, doesn't kill Rudy, just knocks him upside the head,
Yeah,
knocks him out, and she's freaking out, blah, blah, screaming,
yeah,
and he punches her to just shut her up, basically, and
yeah,
knock her out as well. Yeah.
and she
So
just falls to
McQueen
the ground.
hits women twice, and yeah, so
Yeah,
it's not Rudy actually.
so Doc is
Yeah,
kinder to women. Or Rudy's kinder to women than Doc is in this movie. That's like a
I
weird
guess, yeah.
thing.
McQueen's not. He doesn't have his normal like. He's not as. I didn't find him as charming and warm in this movie as Great Escape or Blob, for instance. The two that I kind of watched right before
Yeah,
this. He's colder as this
he gets
character
colder as his
for
career
sure.
goes on. Yeah,
Interesting.
if you look at Thomas Crown Affair, if you look at Bullet and Junior Bonner, even a little bit, like even though that was more of like a quiet drama, like he's definitely not as like wholesome
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like all-American hero as he is in The Great Escape. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that last sequence with all those guys showing up and McQueen just goes berserk, just shooting everybody who, you know, appears in his eye line. And they just get blown away.
Mm-hmm.
Slow motion, just like full on, you know, sailing across the room against the wall, blown away. Blood
Yep.
everywhere.
He's got a shotgun that has unlimited rounds in his pockets, and
Yeah, just
the
never
shotgun
runs out.
has the power of a cannon, and it's great. And I mean, it is classic Peckinpah. It is the ending. It's very satisfying, I suppose. That's
Yeah,
exactly what you want
you're
out of
waiting
this
for
film.
this. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And really, the whole time I'm watching it, like you said earlier, you have a bad feeling that something's going to happen. And I kept imagining the ending to Bonnie and Clyde, or like Sonny in The Godfather, and like being blown away by
Yeah.
thousands of bullets as you're trying to run from the law or trying to run from something. And so I knew that this is going to be building to some kind of a shootout. At least I figured
Mm-hmm.
that it would. But I didn't. I actually thought at this point, because I did not remember how it was going to end, that they were not going to get out of this alive. In this, when you get into this
thought they
scene,
were going to die at the end?
one or both of them, yes. I thought that definitely somebody was going to catch a bullet or get gunned down by somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, we were trained for that with Bonnie and Clyde and a little bit in The Godfather, and also
Mm-hmm.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance
Yeah.
Kid ends that way.
Mm-hmm.
Them, you won't see them killed, but they run out and then we go to freeze frame right as they're about to be shot and killed. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and they're not like really decent people, you know. They like they're
Right.
mixed up in a lot of crime and a lot of wrongdoing, that it would make sense that The Getaway would end with their murder, especially after we've gotten Bonnie and Clyde, where they are just not only killed but just blown to bits in slow motion for like a minute, just like torn apart in that ending.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the most shocking endings to a movie there's ever been in the history of
Oh
cinema.
yeah.
Is Bonnie and Clyde, especially in '67. I cannot imagine what it would have been like to watch that movie with an audience like opening weekend in
Oh my gosh.
'67. You know, where nobody was prepared for an ending like that. I would have been like,
No,
and there's not even an epilogue. Like they get shot, torn up,
that's it. Yeah.
and then they just like walk over to the car and they kind of nod, and then it cuts to black. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa.
I
That's
know.
why Bonnie and Clyde is often considered by many like the beginning of like a new era of filmmaking. When we look at like 67 to 79, like that era of filmmaking, a lot of people attribute it to Bonnie and Clyde was the beginning of that new stage of what, you know, many consider, including myself, like maybe the greatest decade plus of movies is like the late 60s to the late 70s. It's such an exciting time. Kind of all started with Bonnie and Clyde. And
Yeah.
the Graduate a little bit too, which came out around the same
Mm-hmm.
time. But so yeah, that ending's great. And then I mean, did you want more out of the last scene with Rudy? It felt a little anticlimactic. It was very quick. Like they're literally
Yeah, it was.
escaping the building, and he just like leans out the window and shoots at him, and then McQueen turns around, shoots him dead.
Yeah, he didn't
I was
really
like,
put
that's
up.
it.
I know. You kind of wanted Rudy to be more of a threat in the end, or to get, he just needed a little bit more of a glamorous type of send off than he had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We didn't need a major showdown. We didn't need like that, like the camera like kind of going over them and they're staring each other down in the street and
right.
like a Western kind of duel to the death. We didn't need that, but I felt like we spend so much time with Rudy in the second half that I felt like either have him survive so that maybe there could be another movie about Rudy or something, like, or
Mm-hmm.
like I felt like that moment, it didn't have to be 5 minutes, but I felt like we needed a little bit more of his finale there than what we get. It was like shorter than the scene where he got shot earlier in the movie when we thought he was dead.
Yeah, I would have loved like a little bit more of a foot chase, or just something where it's come down to all of the other threats have been eliminated. It's down to just McQueen and Rudy, and McQueen, MacGraw, Rudy, and
Yeah.
just that something through an alleyway, and then you could get shot quickly. But yeah, I agree. It needed an extra little dedicated moment to just wrapping up there, because really McQueen didn't even know he was being pursued. So I guess you could argue that they don't really have, but they have just more of a history because they butted heads from day one. So it just
Yeah.
needed a little bit more of something. Yeah.
Like how cool I feel like McQueen usually is on his game for most of this movie. It would have been cool for there have been a moment where Rudy has Doc in his grasp and Doc can't get out. Like there's nothing he can do.
Yeah.
And Rudy's got him. And then Carol shows up and she blows him away. Oh, it wouldn't be the same thing as the Ben Johnson scene, but like something where there's nothing that Doc can do, and she saves him and kills.
That'd be great.
Like something there, like a really heroic moment at the end of the movie for Carol, I think would have been cool. Because because they were together at the end, and that would have been a great moment for Ally McGraw. Because she's not a big part of the ending. She's there with him, and she's got a gun. Does she kill anyone at the end? I can't remember. Is she actually shooting guys?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like she's just I don't. She's like in the stairwell running alongside McQueen, and she's not really a part of the ending except just chasing and like running away. So it would have been a great like character moment, like, you know, all throughout the movie. We're like, is she kind of for this guy? Is she not? Like, well, and then at the end, she just like she just like I would have loved her to just like push Rudy off a building or something. I don't know. Like it would have been great.
That would have been awesome.
That
would have been great. Anything to just if he didn't because the vest thing too. If you would have just shot him in the chest and he didn't have on a vest, at least you would have kind of paid off that little aspect of their original scene when they're doing the planning. It needed something else, but to give her the gun and to have her do it would have been a great idea.
Like a cool character trait would have been the whole movie. Maybe Carol has an aversion to violence, and so when she shoots and kills the Ben Johnson character, you know, she almost looks like shaken by that, right? It's like she finds it an ugly moment, and like really built up the character as being like, you know, she'll be there for Doc, but she's not gonna shoot and kill anyone, and she doesn't believe in it. And then, you know, Rudy's got Doc in his grasp, and then you just see her with like a machete, just like bring it right down on his head or something. And then, you know, and Doc's like, oh, I didn't think you believed in violence, and you know, like some sort of like a reversal in the script where at the end she's like, well, I did it for you, honey, or something like where she doesn't believe in violence the whole movie, but then that one moment at the end with our main bad guy, like she really just eviscerates him. Could have been, I don't know why, like I'm just like going off of all these ideas what could have been.
I love it.
But yeah, actually, don't you feel like there could have been couldn't there have been one little beat with Carol in the last 20 minutes that could have been really like not applause worthy, but like something with her at the end that was memorable, just her and not Doc as well, like just something with her that she does to save the day, or like that would have been cool.
I know, because he gets shot by Rudy, but it doesn't really have any impact on
he's
him.
Fine.
And he's fine. And they didn't even do the like cliche thing of just like, okay, cool, she's gonna help get him out of somewhere, or you know, he's got his arm around her. Like he didn't really need her. They get into the truck to drive across the border into Mexico, but yeah, she doesn't. It's definitely Steve McQueen's starring role, and he's not really sharing any
and she's
heroic
secondary.
Anything with her. Absolutely, it doesn't. They do let her drive and do some stuff earlier and plant the bombs.
Yeah.
So it's not like just, you know,
she's not whimpering, you know, cowering in the corner like, where's my man? She's a strong woman in the movie. I'm not saying she's not. I just feel like the movie could have given her a little bit more like agency, especially at the end. I do like that, like he's like trying to convince this guy, we're gonna give you $10,000, and he's like, what about 20? And she goes, how about 30?
I know.
He's like,
Steve McQueen doesn't care at all.
He's like, whatever.
She increased the value to 3 times the original.
And I was when we got to that last scene, I'm still like, I feel like something could happen to them. And then the car starts driving off, and then it stays on the car, and I went, I think they're okay. And then the credits began, and I said they're okay. I wasn't sure. I was like, is this movie going to end with their deaths, like Bonnie and Clyde? It felt like it was going there. I felt like that I felt like that could have happened. And they, that's another way they could have used Rudy instead of him being shot and killed on that stairwell or whatever outside the building. Like he could have caught up with them, and like he could have been a part of the last scene of the movie. Like they pay off the guy and they think they're about to get away, and then like maybe like Rudy crashes the car, hit like a vehicle he stole into theirs, and there's a final showdown out there with Rudy. I mean, there could have been something like that, but
That'd been great. Could have been hiding in the bed of that truck, and
or he's like hiding. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. What if like Rudy just walked off with like an injury or something, and we didn't see him for 10 minutes, and then they think they got away and we're good, and they're kissing in the car, and then you just see Rudy like coming out from the back, like he jumped in the back of the truck, and then he busts in, and he starts like he's like reaches for McQueen's neck, and then he starts swerving the car. I mean, that would have been exciting. That would have been really great because we really love Rudy. Like he's a great character in this movie. So I felt like he could have had a better send off, whether he died or didn't. Like I felt like the movie could have given us something more with him. That would have been really exciting at the very end.
Yeah, I would have loved a final shot of Rudy like dead on the pavement, and a random stray cat comes up and like sniffs his body or
sniffs
something.
His body like a little coyote or something, just like walks up and like an animal.
No, a cat, dude, just to pay.
It has to be a cat to pay off from the previous scene.
Got to pay off the cat from earlier.
Like just licks his cheek or something.
Just it's a classic animal worried about its owner, but just a random stray cat just to
he's just
him
dead
off.
on the ground. But that's also kind of a
like
screenplay thing too. So it's like, well, would that have been that wouldn't have felt very natural. It would have felt like a screenplay, addition. So it's kind of like kind of a I might have complained about that. I would have like, oh well, that's kind of contrived. We've seen that. So I don't know. You can never win with me, I guess. But no, overall, I had a really great time with this. I think it's definitely going to be in my top 10 of 72. I think if the character work was a little richer, maybe it'd be a few notches higher on the list. Which I'll be giving in just a few weeks. In January, I do an episode where I kind of talk about the year in film, and I give my 10 favorites and talk about the Oscars and stuff. I think this, and I talk about, number, I can start with 10, work my way to 1 at the end of the episode. And I think The Getaway is going to make it. It's just a really great thrill ride. We've had very few this year. This and Deliverance, really, in like action thriller genre. Like these are kind of the two that I'm taking with me that I really loved. So I really had a good time with The Getaway. I enjoyed it. I'd give it like a 7.5, 8 out of 10, probably.
Yeah, I'd feel like somewhere in that zone, 7, 8 out of 10, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's worthy.
I really enjoyed it. I think there's, like I said earlier, you can see a lot of influence in modern movies with it, and but I thought that it was just a superior version, really well made. Didn't feel dated, other than some of these story aspects with like the women sidekicks and the slapping. But other than that, it was just a fun movie. And there was it might be worth mentioning, because I found it really fascinating, that the novel has a wildly different ending.
Oh, yeah, I didn't look up what's the ending of the novel.
So they still get to Mexico, and they basically go to this sanctuary that is run by somebody named El Rey. And this sanctuary is essentially set up for convicts and people who are trying to escape the United States and go live down here. So everybody that's going there is usually wealthy because they're running from tax evasion, or they're robbers, or whatever it is. So it's like there's this rent that you have to pay to be a part of this El Rey sanctuary, and you have to pay for very expensive stuff. So everybody who then goes into this world, they all go broke right away, and they spend all the money that they had already acquired from doing illegal criminal activity. And there's also like a cannibal camp outside of the sanctuary, so they're kind of basically forced into a new kind of prison. And the film ends with the McQueen and MacGraw characters each trying to hire a surgeon to perform a surgery and kill the other one. And so it's got like a much more surreal. I really made me want to read the book, because it diverts away from a happy ending into a really dark and sort of surreal ending that basically just says that like you can get away with whatever criminal activity you want temporarily, but you're ultimately then going to find yourself in some other kind of prison.
Right.
And it ends with, I guess, them toasting to sort of like, well, we got away, didn't we? And but they're in this new bizarre dark underworld. Sounded really interesting, but I also understand why they would have never made that film.
I feel like Peter Bogdanovich might have ended the movie there, because he ends the Last
Maybe.
Picture Show in a very dour note, a beautiful note, but it does not end happily, the Last Picture Show. And it has a moment at the end where you just really feel for one of the characters. And yeah, I mean, I don't get the sense at the end of The Getaway like they're gonna be just happy and in love and everything's gonna be great. I don't get that sense. I just feel like, okay, they're on to the next part of their journey and they're gonna hit a lot of roadblocks along the way. But I do feel like it does feel like the end. If the movie had gone on another 15 minutes with more, it wouldn't have felt right. Like it feels like once that they pay that guy 30 grand and he walks off and they drive off, that felt like that's it. There's no more story to tell. Like that felt right. So
exactly.
But that's interesting that the novel ends differently. I'm always fascinated when a book is based on a novel, just to read up on like what were the similarities, what were the differences, because most movies are not just scene by scene the same. So it's like, how do you adapt a book into a successful film and keep what people love about the book in the movie but not have it be the same thing? It's like it's a tricky it's a tricky balancing act. So I thought the movie did well there. A couple other things. So I said the movie was the 8th highest grossing film of the year. So it was very popular. It did not do well with awards. It got a Golden Globe nomination for original score. It didn't get a single Oscar nomination. This is I would say one of the better films of 72, and I'm surprised this completely passed over. I guess Academy voters just looked at this as a genre movie and nothing more. But you think like editing? What about editing? Editing was really great.
Say editing.
You know, maybe there's a sound category in 72, maybe best sound, you know? I mean, I don't know about cinematography. You know, I mean, it looks great. I don't know if there's anything like significant about the cinematography. I don't think any of the actors were worthy of a nomination. I mean, I guess you could have argued that Ludi Airy as Rudy could have been in the conversation. I thought he was pretty great, but supporting actor.
Absolutely, I could see that for him. Yeah.
But I mean, Deliverance, I think, is about on par with this. Maybe Deliverance I liked a little more, but because that's dealing with some really interesting themes and ideas in Deliverance, but it's really a genre action film. And Deliverance was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director of 1972. But then The Getaway is just ignored, passed over. I don't think the Academy really liked Sam Peckinpah. Like, I don't know if his work was ever really recognized. So maybe it was something to do with their kind of disdain or dislike of the director. Because Straw Dogs, I thought, was really strong, and that was basically passed over too the year before. So maybe it's something to do with him. I don't know. Steve McQueen also not really. He got one nomination in the mid 60s. Which one was it for? It was for The Sand Pebbles from 66, a movie I have not seen. He got one Oscar nomination. Another thing that might have played a role was that, you know, the initial reviews of this movie were all negative, which surprises me.
Really?
Like the main critics at the time, Vincent Canby in the New York Times called the film aimless. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times, he called it a big, glossy, impersonal, mechanical toy, gave it 2 out of 4 stars. And Pauline Kael, the other big critic at the time who wrote for The New Yorker, she said that the movie left a lot to be desired. So the critics were not loving this when it came out in December of 72. I think if the critical acclaim had been higher, maybe it could have played more of a role during award season. But I think the critics just thought it was like a Bonnie and Clyde ripoff, maybe just like a been there, done that kind of movie. Whereas 50 years on, I think we can appreciate what this movie's trying to do and how much better a job it's doing in the genre than a lot of other films that were coming out around the same time. I thought, like, I can't imagine like getting into the end of this year of 72 and Roger Ebert's like, yeah, 2 stars, it's nothing to talk about. It's like, what? There's a lot of great stuff in this movie. What are you talking about? That's very strange to me.
Yeah, must have. I'm guessing it just must have been generally like a dismissive sentiment towards this kind of a genre.
Maybe.
And I mean, like you said, there really isn't a ton of Deliverance. Definitely has more of a message and more depth than The Getaway, and
Yeah,
so maybe that lack of it and
more
that
creative
is
setting.
just, yeah, exactly. We're okay more with a 2 hour action thriller at this point in time. Maybe at the time it just
Mm.
wasn't as it needed more than that.
That's
But
a
I don't
very
know. There's
yeah.
still so many unique things going on there that I'm surprised that there wasn't somebody who stood up for it.
I just watched so many mediocre films for 72 that I'm like, this one is clearly in another league of its own. Like, it's not the greatest movie of the year, but it's clearly better than at least half or more of the movies I've looked at that are maybe like a part of the genre of the last year and a half. And I'm like, why would this be dismissed as just another, nothing movie? Like, I mean, December is tricky, right? A lot of big movies come out in December, and sometimes a couple get kind of pushed aside. I think this might have been the case where, I mean, this was like the same time as the Poseidon Adventure, which I'm getting to. I'm watching that in a few days. And what else came around that time? Jeremiah Johnson with Robert Redford and some big end of the year
Yeah.
releases. And maybe this one just struck some as like, been there, done that. But
Hmm.
a lot of movies, you give it time, you give it 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And the good ones stick out from the crowd. Like the ones that we don't care about, they like a Junior Bonner, they kind of just go out to pasture. Like, if we don't really talk about
Yeah.
them anymore. And then a movie like The Getaway, it sticks around. This one has definitely stuck around. Modern criticism has been more appreciative of this film. In 2010, the playlist included The Getaway on its list of the 25 all-time best heist movies, describing it as a solid, straight-ahead action flick that's always fun to wander into in the middle of a late-night TV session. I mean, I could see this being, not that we have that anymore because we're all streaming, but like I could see this being a movie where if you're flipping through the channels and you get to the last 30, 40 minutes of this, you'd watch the end. Like, you'd watch the rest of it because it's a fun watch.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
like modern years, like there's more appreciation for The Getaway and what it's done, and that takes me to the last piece of trivia. Have you seen the maligned 1994 remake starring Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger?
No, and James Woods too,
And
right?
James
Isn't it?
Woods. Yeah.
And no, I have not, and I don't know. Did Walter Hill uh, direct or write, or I mean, sorry, did he write
So
or
yeah,
just story by?
so it's directed by Roger Donaldson, kind of a middle of the road kind of action director guy. And then it was co-written by Walter Hill. Released February 11th, 1994. It also stars Michael Madsen, David Morse, and Jennifer Tilly.
Wow.
And I watched this once. I want to say I was in high school. Like, I think I watched it on TV once. The sex scenes in the remake are kind of insane. Like, that's my memory of it when I was young, because it's Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, who were married at the time. They were married, I want to say, like
Hmm.
early 90s, like 90, 91. And so, was this the only movie? No, I think they did maybe one other movie together, but like this was like their big like action film they made together in 94. And the sex scenes are very explicit in the movie. Like, I won't go into
Interesting.
it. But
So they
that's
don't. He
it's
comes out of
like
prison ready to go.
that's right. Yeah. And so I feel like that movie, even though it's maligned and was like really dismissed when that came out, I do feel like in some ways that remake has kept this 72 version alive a little bit, because I feel like
Hmm.
throughout the 90s, the title The Getaway became pretty well known for being this Alec Baldwin movie. But it's also like, and then people remember, oh, right, and that was a remake of the Steve McQueen. So I do think that remake has kept the movie alive more than if the remake had never been done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes it makes you just appreciate the original more, right? So then
Yeah.
people go and say they seek that one out specifically. So,
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. I think people recognize, like, wait, this movie's really terrible, and it makes the original from 72 just so much better. And
interesting. I want to
in
watch it now.
2008, Alec Baldwin was asked about his remake of The Getaway, and all he said about it was a bomb. That was his reaction to The Getaway 14 years later. But that's really quick to do a remake. So this is 72. So that's 22 years later. So that'd be like us remaking right now Aaron Brockovich.
Bad idea.
What's like a big 2000 movie that you could see a remake of? What was like the year end? What Women Want? Oh, they did that. One Men Want. They did that one.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
The Perfect Storm with George Clooney. Gladiator. It'd be like us making a Gladiator remake right now.
Isn't there a Ridley Scott Gladiator sequel or something?
Oh, no.
I think there is. They are working on
something. Are they developing a new Gladiator movie?
I thought I read that at some point.
It'd be like doing another Grinch. Oh wait, they did that too.
They did that too. Yeah, you're proving your own thing wrong.
Because sometimes I'm like, geez, that's really quick to remake something just 22 years later. But it happens here and there. I mean, especially these days, I guess more than. But I feel like in '94, you weren't seeing a whole lot of movies being remade around the early '90s of films that came out in the '70s. That seemed like a little bit too new to be remaking them already. So this is one of the rare ones that got one just a couple decades later, and apparently didn't pull it off the way they did in the original.
Apparently not. Yeah, I really want. I only found out about that when rewatching this, because I don't. So that movie at that time, which would have been at the heyday of me renting movies, just totally
94.
Went over my head.
Yeah, and my dad was a big action guy. I have no memory of seeing it in the theater. I think I was a little too young. I saw my first R-rated film in a theater, an action film, was True Lies, which was July of '94. And I remember that took like weeks of like begging my mom. I'm like, can I see the new Arnold movie? She's like, it's rated R. And I was like begging my dad, and he's like, okay, we'll go. But so if the Getaway was February of '94, that would have been a little bit too early for me. So I think I saw it at home on video. My memory is a just wildly gratuitous sex scene. And then I have a vague memory. I think the end of the movie is the same. I think an older man, like a guy, picks him up in a truck and they pay him off. And if I remember right, it's Richard Farnsworth from The Straight Story.
The Straight Story. That'd be great.
He's the guy at the end that they pay off with the truck. And I read a quote where Farnsworth later said he was embarrassed to be in that movie because of all of the sex and nudity and violence. And he only shot his one little part. And it's very sweet. Like there's no language or violence in his scene. It's just like very nice. And later on was like very embarrassed to be a part of this movie. Thankfully, was not his last film role. He would go on to be in The Straight Story, which is such a great movie. I loved that. I finally saw it just about 3 or 4 years ago. I had seen that one by Lynch and really enjoyed it. Like if you can get past it being in no way a Lynch film, like you can really get into it and involved in the story. I like that.
Yeah, there's only a few moments where you feel the David Lynch presence, touch. But yeah, I remember seeing it, like renting it when it first came out. I don't know why, because I wouldn't have chosen that over Nightmare on Elm Street 6 or whatever on the shelf. My mom probably rented it, that was really what started.
Was the G rating that got you excited to rent it?
I think she liked Richard Farnsworth's career, and he had been in the news because he had just died before it came out. So I think maybe she found an interest, and she likes like Fried Green Tomatoes and kind of just those feel good kind of movies. But yeah, that one's really the movie that kind of set me off and like, wait a sec, there's more than horror films and killer dolls and puppets and monsters. And then it really like, that was one of the early ones that like really got me out of that, that horror trance that I was in as a kid. But
speaking of killer dolls, I just watched finally, because I got access to Peacock. I finally watched season 1 of Chucky, and I was really happy with it. It was fun.
Oh, good. I haven't seen it. I know that
it's very like it's rated R. It's not like it's like, oh, it's watered down. It's on Peacock or for NBC or something. It's like it's pretty violent, and it continues the franchise well. Chucky is really fun.
Okay, awesome.
but yeah, so I thought it was a strange moment in my life when I put on a G-rated David Lynch movie, that opened with Walt Disney Pictures present.
I know.
It was like, what is that? And he made that movie the same year that he made Mulholland Drive. Like he was making them. I think he did the pilot first or right after. Like it was around the same period that he made the straight story that he made Mulholland Drive, and that just blows my mind even.
Yeah.
Richard Farnsworth, rest in peace, Richard Farnsworth. Rest in peace, a lot of people involved with The Getaway, man. Sam Peckinpah passed away, I believe, in '84, and the guy who played Rudy, Al Lettieri, died in '75, and we're going to talk about at the end here Steve McQueen and his untimely death at age 50 in 1980. I knew he died young. I didn't know it was that young when I looked up his biography yesterday. Before we get to Steve McQueen at the end here, our final two segments, Jordan, what was your choice for a divine double feature? Something similar and more modern to kind of end a double feature with The Getaway from '72.
I went back and forth between a few options, but I think what I ultimately would go with is No Country for Old Men.
Ooh, that's a good choice.
Because of A Bag of Money and
Western vibe.
And Anton Chigurh is a much scarier version of Rudy.
Of Rudy. Yes.
in the pursuant. So I think that's kind of, I feel like that's the darker version you were talking about of what a Rudy character would be, and minus the the romance side of things, because it's kind of just Josh Brolin. There isn't a love interest, but it's got a lot of the same tropes, but in the darker Coen brother version, and so I think that'd be a good 1-2 punch.
That was an exciting time for cinema, like the end of '07. I remember just like the richness we got that year. We got, in the course of a few weeks, we got No Country for Old Men, we got There Will Be Blood, we got The Savages, we got Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. We got so many great films, and I just loved No Country for Old Men. I didn't understand all of it. I remember when I saw it. I mean, how old was I then? Like, so I was like 20. I mean, just out of college, so 22, 23, and I didn't like. Tommy Lee Jones has that long monologue at the end, and then the movie just cuts to black, and I'm like, wait, what? But as I get older, like I've seen it a couple times since, and it grows on me every time I watch it, and it's just like so complex. And what a great Best Picture winner! That's a terrific movie, and worth. I feel like every 5 to 10 years, that one's worth another look. There's so much great craftsmanship in that movie, and that amazing performance by Javier Bardem. That was an exciting time too. Just back to back, we get Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men, and then Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight is 7-8 months later, and both performances win Best Supporting Actor at the Academy Awards. Two villainous performances that are some of the best in movie history. And so that's a great choice. I love that movie. I went with something newer called Queen and Slim from 2019, which is not a heist movie, but it's so it's two African American leads, Daniel Kaluuya and Jodie Turner-Smith. A cop pulls them over. Something takes place that just it doesn't go well. The cop is shot, and they go on the run for the movie, and they're being chased down by the authorities, and they're in a relationship, and they're trying to work through their issues while they try to basically stay alive. And it's kind of I would say it's more aligned with Bonnie and Clyde, and in terms of the pacing and everything, than maybe The Getaway. But it's a movie I feel like kind of came and went, and I caught up with it maybe a year ago. I watched it. I love Daniel Kaluuya. I love his work in Get Out, and he just won the Oscar for Judas and the Black Messiah, which I believe we talked about on our bonus episode. I think I talked about how I wanted to see that. Really terrific film. And I feel like Queen and Slim kind of slipped through the cracks at the end of 2019. And it's a really great movie. I'd give it like 3.5 out of 4. It was just really well done. Terrific performances and lots of tension, and just an ending I've not forgotten since I watched it. Like the ending is just on another level. It's really great. So I would recommend Queen and Slim would be an interesting pairing with The Getaway. Kind of like
that's a great option.
You know, they're not robbing banks, but there's definitely that kind of like on the run getaway mentality to the whole movie. So that'd be a good one too. All right, so that takes us to our final segment, Beyond the Flick. Steve McQueen, So I have not watched The Blob since I was younger, but I remember I had a good time. And that's not really considered like his breakthrough movie, but that's one of
Hmm.
his early roles. What did you think of The Blob?
I thought, well, I mean, what's interesting there is I don't know how old he actually was at the time, but he's clearly playing someone who feels a lot younger than he actually is. So it kind of suffers, I
Yeah.
thought, a little bit from that 40-year-old playing a 20-year-old
So he was born in
type of thing.
1930. So Blob is, I think, 56. So he's like 25.
Oh, wow. So actually, he's not, he just looked, wow. So he
He
did
just
not
he just
look
always looked old.
25. He just always kind of felt like he had, I mean, he didn't look a lot younger to me than he did
In The Getaway.
in the Getaway.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Um,
One of those
Blob
guys.
is Blob is quintessential 50s monster movie, just like that. It's got the cheesy effects and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of like running around town trying to, convince the police to believe people to believe in the monster on the loose. So it kind of has all those horror tropes. But what's really interesting, probably the biggest difference from him and that to Getaway is that warmth and charm. And he's just, and how much of that was purposeful to that character, or how much is him as a person
Mhm.
going through the Hollywood machine and changing just how he sold himself as an actor, I guess, is the king of cool. Uh, but um, but yeah, Blob. I wouldn't say Blob holds up. The remake is far superior in my opinion.
Yeah, the Chuck Russell
But
remake.
yeah, that one's just because it just that one like the concept works better for that 80s cheese extreme practical effects kind of approach, I think, than the
Mhm.
the 50s version. But McQueen is good in it. He's probably the best part about it, and really holds it together. And he's instantly likable, very charming. I really enjoyed him in that. I'd say
Mhm.
that's probably what really held my attention more than
Okay.
the concept of a blob from space did.
Yeah. And then what do you think of The Great Escape? That was your first watch?
Yeah, that was my first watch, other than again scenes and clips
Mhm.
over the years, or the bit from Once Upon
Once
a
Upon a
Time in
Time in
Hollywood,
Hollywood, which is great. Yeah.
uh, which is great. But I loved it. I thought that instantly became one of my favorite prison escape movies
Mhm.
ever. It's so much fun. The ensemble cast is great. What I love about that movie too so much is that McQueen, even though he's the star of that, his storyline doesn't really become important to the film until a little bit later
Mm.
in. You spend so much time seeing the other prisoners preparing the great escape, and
Mhm.
you're kind of like, McQueen's locked in a prison cell this entire time. He's basically locked up for bad behavior.
Yeah.
Why? How are they gonna, work him into this? And so I love the idea that there's sort of two competing escape plot devices, the main one with all of the 200 prisoners they're trying to get out, and then McQueen's sort of solo escape that
Mhm.
ultimately is going to provide information to help the larger thing. And then by the end of it, you really work into him being a bigger part of it.
Right.
Um, but I loved it, and he's great in that. Again, very different than I thought than Getaway, because he's so much more cocky in like
Mhm.
kind of an overt way, and is just constantly messing with people in that film. Whereas the Getaway is just much more, like I said earlier, he only smiles like once at the end when they're like in bed with the money, and maybe when he's making your ketchup eggs,
The
there's
ketchup.
a little lighter moment from him there. But Great Escape, the score and the tone of that movie is just so much more fun, given
Right.
the
Mhm.
circumstances too of a Nazi prison camp, which is not a very light
Yeah.
or fun
I feel like the
topic.
I feel like The Great Escape could have been called The Getaway.
Yeah, could have been, sure, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's definitely in my top three. It's just he's not like the star, like he's not like it's a big ensemble piece.
right,
I think
right.
Donald Pleasance is really great. Like that's one of
He's
his
awesome.
early roles that you really notice him
Uh-huh,
in.
uh-huh.
And terrific ensemble, and it's long, right? Isn't it like 2.5 hours?
Yeah, it's
Great Escape
three.
is
It's
long. Is
basically
it
three
three?
hours.
Okay.
Yeah, it's long.
And so it's kind of an epic. It's long, but it's worth your time. It's really great. One of his just like signature roles in movies, I think. And then I haven't seen very much else. I've seen Papillon with Dustin Hoffman, which is also like a prison movie, more of a character study than it is like an action movie or a thriller. But like Dustin Hoffman, like from like 67 The Graduate to 79 Kramer versus Kramer, it's just like one great movie and performance after another. If you watch like his that select filmography for him, and I would even take it into 1982 Tootsie is really fantastic too. But that run of his in the 60s 70s is really great, and they have an interesting tension together, chemistry together. Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman you wouldn't expect, and they're really great in that. And then the Thomas Crown Affair is not, I wouldn't say the Thomas Crown Affair is at the level of like Getaway, The Great Escape, but it's a pretty fun little romp with Faye Dunaway right after Bonnie and Clyde. And it, like really the director of that film just makes both of them look as gorgeous as ever. And that's another film he did that was remade a few decades later, that one with Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo in 99. There's also a Thomas Crown Affair remake from 99. And then yeah, I saw The Blob when I was younger, and then I've seen Junior Bonner, which we talked about a few months ago. But there's still a bunch I want to see. Love with the Proper Stranger, The Sand Pebbles, which got him an Oscar nomination. A film called The Reavers, which I've heard good things. That was 69. So before I started this podcast, I haven't seen that yet. I'm very excited for The Towering Inferno from 74. I've heard about that movie my whole life. It's like it's like I feel like of all the disaster movies of the mid 70s, I feel like that's the one that's maybe like thought of the best or has like the most stature to it. Big ensemble disaster movie. He's the lead of that. And then he made two final films before he died, and one's called Tom Horn, and I've heard good things about that film, like one of his last two. So I'd like to check that one out as well. But again, he passed away very young. He was 50 years old. He was the last film he was in, a month after shooting ended, he discovered he had cancer, and he spent the last year of his life just doing anything he could to get rid of the cancer, including, as you mentioned earlier, right? He went to Mexico a couple times, and he died. He went to Mexico to get a surgery done that was, in the United States, they were like poo-pooing it, like, don't do that. That could kill you. And he ignored them, went to Mexico, got the surgery done. They considered the surgery a success. The next day he died of a heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah, it was some 50. Kind of a crazy tumor that he had.
He had a tumor. Yeah.
And the U.S. doctors said that the tumor was, maybe you could operate, but your heart won't be able to withstand the stress.
Heart will not
surgery.
Withstand it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they were right in the end. And he died there. So, I mean, whether he had done that or not, it was inevitable. It sounded like that he was very terminal at that point.
Right.
And who knows how much more time he had to make, but I don't think there was enough time to make more movies. Or
I don't think he would have made another film.
But it's sad to know that he really was that desperate to prolong things, meaning, he was in a good place in his life, right? If you're fighting that hard to prolong, he was not ready to go. So that's always sad to hear that.
Yeah, I don't know. In 1979, 1980, I don't think he was quite at the stature of where he was in like the 60s and early 70s, but he was still a movie star. He was still making a lot of films. And so if he had not gotten cancer, if he had kept making movies, I would have been really interested to see what would Steve McQueen have done in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Like, it would have been interesting. Like what kind of could he have played like a Burt Reynolds and Boogie Nights in the 90s? Like, could he have played a role like that? Like, as he's older, and like that would have been really cool. Like, I would have loved to have seen what McQueen could have done in older age, like even just a couple kind of indie projects or something. I think he could have brought something unique to them, when we'll never know. But I'm at least happy that there's still at least 7 or 8 more after The Getaway to see that he made in the 70s. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I want to see The Hunter. That one,
The Hunter,
the last film.
That was the last one. Okay,
the last one, right?
Yeah. So his last year, is Tom Horn and The Hunter. Like, I would be curious to see like what those last couple projects are all about. So I just think he's not like the greatest actor. He's not an Oscar-winning kind of actor, but there is like an energy and a magnetism to him, a charisma to Steve McQueen that very few actors have. And for me, the one movie I haven't mentioned is my favorite Steve McQueen film that I've seen, and that's Bullet. Jordan, you have to
Mm,
watch Bullet from
I need to see
68,
Bullet.
which is kind of like The Getaway in that it's kind of just a genre movie. He's on the case and there's a killer and blah, blah, blah. But it's got this car chase halfway through that is one of the most famous car chases in movie history in San Francisco. And I want to say it goes on for 10 plus minutes. And it is like, it is stunning to this day. And it's been what, 54 years since Bullet came out. And it's still just a stunning piece of filmmaking. And everything around it, I think, has a lot of good atmosphere and tension. And it's one of his best performances. It's a character I wish he could have gone on to play, kind of like a Dirty Harry. I wish he could have done more of them because he's really great in that role. He's got like a hard edge to him, but he's not like Getaway level, like Never Smiles. Like he still has a little bit of life to him in Bullet from 68. And I believe I read in the last year that Steven Spielberg is considering doing a remake of Bullet as his next movie after The Fabelmans. I read that in the last year that he was considering remaking Bullet as his
I'd
next
love to
film.
see Spielberg just make a sort of car chase film, something simple, like a small
like go back to Duel
thriller like that. Yeah, exactly. That'd be amazing.
I can't even imagine an actor like who would be an actor today of like Steve McQueen's level of charisma and beauty. Like I don't know. I mean,
he's on his own.
Spielberg could get anybody he wanted for that. But I feel like Bullet is old enough that we could. I'd be interested to see a new version of that by a really great filmmaker. Would be curious to see what they would do with that.
Absolutely, I think you could. I don't feel like. I mean, I haven't seen it, but I don't feel like that is a sacred thing that you couldn't do, especially if you're Spielberg and you would just. Yeah, I mean, watching Steve McQueen, I kept thinking like, who is like him now? And I don't really have a good answer for that. I don't think there really is anyone that is quite because he's not, his physical presence isn't really a part of things, yet he's the leading man, but he's kind of vulnerable at times, kind of goofy at times, kind of serious and stoic. He's just really hard to like put into a box of like, he's like this.
Yeah.
There's times I got Daniel Craig vibes from him.
Craig.
But not in the same, maybe just more of they kind of look slightly similar. But
I could see that. I could see Daniel Craig playing the role in a new Bullet. Like that would be cool. I don't know if it would.
There was at one point. Yeah, exactly.
He'd probably be like,
Steve McQueen was British. He would have.
Right.
Mm-hmm. He would have made a great James Bond, I think, if he was British.
Steve McQueen.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. But yeah, that. I don't know. You just have to go in a different direction. You're not going to ever actually replace him.
Do you think we need another remake of The Getaway?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think you need another. I don't think
we need it either.
At the end of the day, it doesn't separate itself so much from like movies like True Romance or Drive, even just like any. Those are two of the others that I kept thinking.
Ryan Gosling could be good for a Bullet. Ryan Gosling could be good. He could do it. A Bullet remake that could be good.
He could do it.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think you necessarily need another Getaway.
Yeah.
I'm sure that won't stop them from doing it, but it's just go and make like Baby Driver or something, which is The Getaway with just a sort of a different vibe to it. You know?
Yeah, I think The Getaway is a weird kind of property that you just twist it a little bit, and then you can just create your own original movie. You don't need to remake The Getaway.
Exactly. Yeah,
you're exactly right. Like Baby Driver, which was fun. All right, Jordan, that takes us to the end here. Thanks for talking to me today about this great movie, The Getaway. It was fun to talk about a non-genre piece with you. We don't have to always talk horror, right?
No, I love this, and yeah, thanks for having me, and like you said, it's such a great excuse and reason to sort of look at a part of a blind spot in my watching history, and Steve McQueen and The Getaway are definitely up there. So it's a great excuse to go back and watch something that then can find inspiration from now. But I love talking non-horror.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think it's so important to not forget the older films, to just think, oh, I'm just going to pay attention to the new stuff. Like, I feel like if you're into movies the way we are, you have to be open to looking at older films from previous decades and kind of seeing, and it takes us kind of through like where we were then and how we got to the place we're in now. And you get to see how genres evolve over the decades. And I just find it all very fascinating. And I feel like this podcast kind of gives us all an excuse to go back and look at some of these movies that we're not talking about as much anymore. I think it's worth doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here again, Jordan. Thanks to all of you for listening. Before we get to my final spiel, I should say, anything you'd like to promote, Jordan, or tell our listeners where they can find you online?
No, I mean, you can find me on Instagram at Jordan Downey, my full name, and Twitter at Scare Jordan. But nothing new to promote at the time.
And all the listeners, check out Jordan's movies. He's a great filmmaker. Check out The Headhunter, which is it still on Shudder? Where is Headhunter now?
Yeah, you can rent it on
Shudder,
VOD, get a DVD on Amazon or whatever, or Shudder if you want to stream it.
Yeah. A fantastic movie, Jordan. I really love that one, and can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you very much. And what I do next will be the next episode of
our yearly check-in. Our yearly check-in. Next time we talk, we'll have an update. Awesome.
That's right.
All right, Jordan, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for being here. Thanks to all of you for listening. You can find us online at filmat50.com. We're on Instagram and Twitter. Check out my YouTube channel, Brian Rowe Video, for all things Oscars. And until next time, remember, 50 never looked this good.